Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Rich Clark, Guide to the Right Path. So I spoke yesterday about depression part one and the different types. So today I'm actually going to put part two and part three together. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, with this, how would I help someone with depression? So I'm going to talk about three techniques I use, which is CBT, hypnotherapy, and psychotherapy. I'm going to also explain then a case study and how I helped that person with depression. So I'm going to explain a few things today within this talk. So the first one is, when I'm talking about therapeutic methods to do with depression, again, I've explained depression again. Depression is the mindset or physical need of how we deal with this and how we feel at a low and so forth. Again, please listen to part one for the more explanations of the different types. So the first thing I would do is, so therapeutic methods I'd use are here the following. So the first one I'd use is cognitive behavior therapy. So this is CBT, and this works with restructuring and challenging the cognitive patterns of negative thoughts. So what does that mean, the restructuring? Imagine that when you've got a computer and you defrag it, you imagine that you're actually cleaning it up. So what it is you're restructuring the way the brain works. Now, I talked about Hegel's dialectic the other day, but restructuring and challenging the behavior, the patterns, is part of what we do as a therapist, especially this, is to challenge this. So if someone has a thought pattern of this is why I'm this, you have to challenge this, like, why? And is it benefiting you? Is it serving you? And changing that. That's how you would restructure the cognitive patterns of negative thoughts. Also about how do they look at everything you give them give them an example and see how they react to it. Do they always come up with the negative at every single thing they talk about, which you present to them? See, so that's sometimes, is it something they do all the time, or is it only for certain things what trigger them? The reframing and restructuring is the engagement in activities by increased reward. So the issue is, many people believe that if they do something, they need a reward in it. There's no intrinsic reward of just actually doing something. So you have to kind of change the way people act within that. So this is sometimes an issue what we see within childhood as well, is that many people, they see that if they do very well, they get a reward. And sometimes that isn't actually how the world works. Sometimes actually the reward is the challenge, that someone's really had something which challenged them and they got through it, and that is the reward itself, that they actually managed to get through it. That can be just as rewarding as just someone who is just instantly good at everything. Because some people, when they're actually are rewarded all the time for being great at something, when they actually have the all or nothing issue, is when they don't do very well, then they go into depressive mode, or they end up going into this, oh, everything's bad. They're overly hypercritical. So they have to, so that's about creating the balance. And CBT is very helpful with doing this. The other thing with CBT methods I use is creating effective techniques for the client to solve any problem that occurs. So these creative, effective techniques is when something happens where where they are struggling, is actually positioning them, giving them the tools in their mind, as well as how they would also physically and mentally, auditory, kinesthetically, kinesthetically is touch, feel, and so forth. Auditory is by hearing, and then or a visual is by seeing that problem and how you can break that down. So the brain then works in a different way. So then you can see a problem, and in the brain already, it's breaking it down into different things. And seeing as a problem or a negative, it sees as, right, this is what I need to do first, taking smaller incremental steps to overcome it. So with hypnotherapy, how would I use it?